cooking the GRI standards or hearing about the new spices that the new universal standards at GRI are offering us in our sustainability reporting mix. So we're delighted to have Peter Paul van der Wijs with us. Peter Paul is the Chief External Affairs Officer at GRI, and he's responsible for really all of the advocacy that GRI does so impressive around the world, and developing all of the internal and external communication. So who better to talk to us than Peter Paul about what do the new universal standards mean? What are the key changes that reporters are going to have to be thinking about? And what are the key implications of those changes for disclosure going forward? So, Peter Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Elaine.
Take it away. Tell us what's happening with the new universal standards.
I will. Well, thank you, Elaine and Alex, for having me, and good afternoon, everyone participating in the summit. I find it a real pity. I just caught the end of the last panel, and I'm sorry to have to inform Anna Beer that he's surrounded with yet another communicator, because I have a degree in advertising originally, so sorry about that. And it's a pity that I haven't been able to sample all that's been served up today, because I looked at the agenda, it looked like a great menu. Anyway, it's a pleasure to give you a taste of our updated universal standards, and maybe then we can dive into more of a conversation. So I'll keep this introduction brief, but let me start by saying that we at GRI are extremely proud about this launch. It really marks the first significant change to our standards since we moved to a standard system in 2016. The revised universal standards set a new global benchmark for transparency, and more importantly, raised the bar on due diligence and human rights reporting. If you think about it, it's built around the concept of impact, material topics, due diligence, and stakeholder engagement. And these updates really make it clear how companies can provide more transparency and be accountable and be held accountable for what they report on. So if you look at major changes, and Elaine, I'll keep this brief. First of all, we bring more focus to material topics with more clarity on reporting principles, requirements, and structure, ensuring that the reports really that are produced are of the highest quality. Secondly, and this was a major reason for doing it, we are the only standard set that really provides a full reflection of due diligence expectations as are set by authoritative instruments, and really allow organizations to manage their sustainability impacts through that. And we're talking about being able to adhere to the UN guiding principles for business and human rights, the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. Yes, I'm cheating here because I always miss one of the list. The OECD due diligence guidance for responsible business conduct, the ILO international labor standards, and finally, the ICGN global governance principles. And we think that's very important because it will enable comparable reporting. It really positions companies best to respond to emerging regulatory requirements, such as the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which I think we'll touch on later on in this conversation a little bit more, but also the enterprise value reporting plans by the IFRS. So it's really setting companies up for that. And the second major development was really the launch of the first of ultimately 40 GRI sector standards. The addition of these new sector standards to our modular system of sustainability reporting standards helps companies to really focus on reporting on issues that matter most within a sector. It addresses their shared challenges on sustainable development. And with the 40 sectors identified, we started with the ones with the highest impact, like coal. The first one we launched was oil and gas. And then we're going on to mining, agriculture, aquaculture, and fishing. And those are already in development. And as I said, we hopefully end up with 40 standards in that field. And so going forward, organizations will begin with the universal standards, then they apply the relevant sector standards, and then they go on to the topic standards. Let me leave it at that as an introduction, and we can come back to this later if you want to.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. So materiality, a full reflection, as you said, of due diligence and human rights, and all of this leading to more complete and comparable reporting and GRI sector standards that will enable companies to disclose specifically on the things that matter in their sectors. So, Alex, what do you think about that? First of all, please, I don't think I introduced you at the start of the session as I was scrambling around with my paperwork. So please say a few words about your interest in this, and then over to you. Why don't you sort of ask Peter Paul about these topics?
I can ask a question or two for sure. My interest is from a business school here in Thailand with Chulalongkorn University. We, of course, are trying to prepare our business students for the world that we see coming and not the world that was past 10, 20, 30 years ago. And that, of course, involves a very, very concentrated focus on sustainability and, of course, accountability, reporting, all the side issues that go along with that. It's a very exciting time to be in education, I must say. Just as Tim was saying earlier, these are exciting times. But just to jump right in, because we've only got about 20 minutes or so now. Peter Paul, you closed talking about sector standards, and that's something that we worked with here a lot. My unit goes out and helps companies to understand the GRI and to apply them when they can. And there's been some question raised over time why the sector standards have been right along coming. Over many, many years now, we've only got a very few sectors covered. So I just wondered, is there a reason for that? And can we expect a little more alacrity down the line?
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. And nice to meet you. We haven't met before, so good to see you on this panel. Well, a couple of points I like to make on that question. First of all, the current program was indeed started in 2019, and developing a standard takes about a year to 40 months. So there is a lag time since we launched a program. It's actually not new in the sense that it's actually building on something that we had before, which were those sector guidelines that were part of the G4 version of our standards. So in that sense, it's not new. And then at some point, you run into the limitations of a standard setting organization. How many standards can we do at the same time? And we considered that having the universal standards and the topic standards, including the materiality assessment, was our first priority, and then we moved on. So it is always unfortunate that it takes time to develop standards, and we have the ambition to go faster, but we are now, we have the program in place. We're running as fast as we can. Already, as I said, mining is on the planning, agriculture and fishing are being launched in the summer of 2022. So it's really picking up space, and we'll hope to fill this gap as soon as possible with the aim to get to 40 standards. Is there
predictable, aside from the few subjects that you've just mentioned, what's driving the different issues? I mean, is there a priority list that you have or priority guidelines?
Absolutely. As you know, we develop our standards using our multi-stakeholder process, whereby we go out with our ideas and of what should be developed, and based on the input from various stakeholders around the world, we've created a priority list in four categories. And it's really based on the impact that sectors have on society. So we started with those that were deemed to have the heaviest impact, and then we work our way down the list. And forgive me for not being able to list all 40, but all of our development programs are available on our website. The list is available on our website, and I'm happy to share a link later with you so you can see the grouping that we've made. And there are always some practical considerations as well, right? But yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's excellent. You also mentioned, of course, materiality, which is so critical. Is it my imagination, or are our options and flexibility come to materiality more limited now as we develop the GRI?
Well, fundamentally, the definition of materiality within GRI isn't changed. It's been strengthened to really reflect this concept of double materiality, and our part of that concept of double materiality, where you basically say that the company has both an impact on the world that you need to understand, and once you understand that, you can understand what subset of those impacts might also have a financial impact of the world. And when we get maybe discuss, and I know Tim addressed it, I guess, in his presentation around IFRS and EU, that's also where you see that concept come up. So we're really aligning ourselves with that concept of double materiality and reporting on the need for a company to report on those two pillars, financial reporting as well as sustainability reporting. That's one. The other thing we've done, and I think that's, you might be alluding to, is we have raised the profile of human rights within our standards. It is no longer necessarily treated as just a material topic. We're actually saying it's a category, just like environment, just as social and governance. And so we're requiring in our new standards companies to report much more on basic points around human rights, regardless, because we believe it's important. And then once you get to the materiality assessment, there's a list of about 30 topics that could be addressed under topic specific if it becomes more material. But we are saying, and this is very much in line with the expectations globally from regulators through the authoritative instruments, the main one being the UN Guiding Principles, to say, well, this is an important topic. Human rights, don't forget, Alex, negative human rights impacts are the most acute impacts that a company can have, and by and large, they're underreported. So the UN came up with their guidelines and principles. So we've taken the step to actually normalize it. And actually, from a company perspective, and then I'll shut up because I know I'm rambling on a little bit. From a company perspective, the good news is it really also builds on this idea of collect and report once and use many times. By integrating this in the GRI standards and the reporting on those requirements, companies can use the GRI report to also fulfill reporting needs that come up through other pieces of legislation. So even though it looks as more work, at the end of the day, we think it will save time and work for companies.
Oh, I see we have another optimist, Peter Paul. Let's hope that that's going to work. But if I may, I just wanted to come back to this question of the reporting burden. I mean, it seems that with these universal standards, companies are going to have to report a whole lot more. There's more about human rights. There's a whole lot more about governance that companies who have, not reported comprehensively in GRI in the past, they're going to have to start, reporting tons of stuff about their governance structures and the impact of the board of directors in sustainability. I mean, is it right? And then, of course, through the new in accordance approach, companies are going to have to report more on each of their material topics. It's not just a matter of cherry picking the single indicator that fits the topic. So could you talk a little bit about that, Peter Paul? Is GRI expecting that companies will have a lot more to do to respond to be in accordance with these universal standards and the new overall approach, and also these governance disclosures, which are very extensive?
Right. I think the term burden is relative, Elaine. I'm staying the optimist here. So I would say not necessarily much more. First of all, as I said earlier, we see an increase requirements from governments around the world for reporting. So one way or the other, this information is required already. The shift in reporting approach will really that we've taken really clarifies the process of reporting and actually simplifies it. Where there once were 3 distinct options for reporting in accordance, there's only now an either-or situation. Either you comply with the requirements, or you claim that you've prepared a report in reference to the GRI standards. So with only one option in accordance, we're basically enabling companies to provide a complete picture of the most significant impacts. If an organization cannot comply with all those requirements, of course, reporting in accordance with the GRI standards, they can always claim that the report was prepared with reference to standards and explain why. So, yeah, yes, there is an increased number of disclosures, but that's almost very much in line with the societal expectations that we've normalized in our standards.
Yeah, I think the maybe is a sort of recognition that this could be a little uncomfortable for many companies who've not been or who are not used to reporting that extensively. But I think we hear what you're saying, Peter Paul. You're saying, hey, it's going to happen anyway. And by using the GRI standards, it's a way of managing that disclosure in a consistent way and being able to use that for meeting other needs.
Maybe I may extend a little bit on and try to take away a little bit more of the concern that you raised, because I know the concern is there by companies, right? But the governance disclosure should really provide information about the governance structure, composition, knowledge, rules, and remuneration. If a company intends to publish a standalone report, they don't necessarily have to include that information in the sustainability report if it's already reported somewhere else, because a lot of this information is already reported somewhere else. So it's not necessarily new information; it's bringing it together. So we allow them to report and point to where the information is already is. So trying to make it as straightforward as possible. Also, we're not suggesting that all these governance structure roles and actions are already in place. If not, we provide the option and you stay on in accordance to explain why you don't have them. So that's really trying to balance the thing. And the last thing, and I need to get my commercial pitch in here as well, I guess. We don't leave companies hanging. So on our website, we have a whole host of free and paid for tools to help them make the transition. And it starts with a simple mapping exercise. What was in the old standard, what's in the new standard. So you can immediately see what the differences are. And it goes all the way to our GRI Academy, where we provide specific courses that really do a deep dive in, okay, how do you do that? What has changed? What can we do differently? And so on. So companies are at least not on their own.
So it's not as tough as it looks, and if it's tough, we'll help you. Sounds great.
Exactly.
Alex, any last question, thoughts from you, because we need to sort of, unfortunately, wrap it up.
I thankfully, Peter Paul anticipated some of my thoughts. I appreciate that very much, Peter Paul, and I think I'll be in touch again privately.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And any final thoughts you want to share, Peter Paul? I know this has been a really sort of rapid, quick deep dive. Any final things that messages you want to get across before let me move?
Sorry for cutting you off. By the way, I like how you quickly changed hats between those sessions.
Yeah, well, you know, Las Vegas style.
There you go. One thing, and it's another positive comment maybe, and unfortunately I didn't have the chance to listen to Tim's session completely, but I think a lot of companies are thinking about the development in the European Union and in the IFRS and how that comes together. And just a couple of words on that. We really see those two initiatives as complementary. As I mentioned earlier, we have this concept of double materiality that we truly believe in and the EU believes in. And the good news there is twofold. One, GRI has been named co-constructor of the European standard. So the idea being that the EU didn't want to start from scratch. They really want to build on what's already there. And we are engaged in almost all the topics. And really the new universal standards are taken as the base for their new guiding overarching standards. So I think there's a lot of good news because, again, it doesn't mean you have to start from scratch. Companies that have to report on that. Secondly, we are, of course, engaged also with the IFRS and working with them as much as we can to make sure that the ultimate and optimal alignment is there. So, yes, there's more to come on that field, but really by trying to leverage what's already existing, it should be reasonably okay.
Great. Thanks for that, because I had intended to ask you about that, and I forgot. So thanks for raising that. Really interesting to watch what's happening, and I think really useful to follow the GRI approach here. It's trying, you know, as the GRI mission, sort of trying to bring everyone together and hopefully make life simpler, but ensure we get the right sort of disclosures that are going to help us, you know, do the right things and measure the right things.
Excellent.
Peter Paul, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights. Great to see you. Alex, thank you as well.